Students are getting ready to head back to school. The CDC is expected to announce new COVID guidelines. The changes reportedly include a reduced focus on testing and social distancing. Multiple news outlets say a draft document of the guidelines indicates students who are not fully vaccinated and are exposed to COVID will have to mask for 10 days instead of quarantining. And joining us now to discuss is Betsy DeVos, former U.S. Education Secretary. Secretary DeVos, welcome back. Always great to be with you. Let's talk more about these possible updates to the CDC guidance for schools. Do you think these guidelines are a step in the right direction? And also, how do you think it may impact learning for students?
Well, absolutely. They are an important step in the right direction, and not far enough, fast enough in my book, because so many kids have had these mandates in and out, come and go, and very little attention paid to all the other negative impacts that masking and keeping schools shut down has had on kids. We know there's tremendous learning loss. We also know there's tremendous mental health, a rise in mental health issues with kids. And so the focus really needs to be on getting kids back to learning and, importantly, allowing their families to augment and or choose a different setting for their education if what they have been assigned to is not working for them. And there's policies in states that are helping to support that, but it needs to happen more quickly for more kids in the country.
Yeah, I want to talk about this in some major cities nationwide, including New York City, Chicago, and also Los Angeles. Schools are facing shrinking enrollment. Let's talk more about that and what's driving this decrease.
Well, I think families have become very frustrated with how the system has handled things the last couple of years, and they've begun taking things into their own hands. And for families that have the resources and the ability to make other choices and other decisions, we've seen many of them doing that. And the key needs to be, however, that all families need to be able to make those choices. If their assigned school hasn't responded, isn't working for their child, or isn't acknowledging the tremendous needs and learning loss children have had, they need to have other options and other opportunities. They need to have that education freedom that I frequently talk about.
Yeah, I'm going to piggyback off of that. It seems that Americans' confidence in public schools is really approaching an all-time low. There was a recent Gallup poll revealing that only 28% of Americans have a great deal or quite a lot of confidence in public schools, sort of backing up what you're saying. Your reaction to that poll?
Well, again, it's not surprising, I think, observing how the system has responded, reacted, conducted itself over the last 2 years. Many parents had a front row seat to see what their children were actually learning or not learning. And in many cases, they were appalled by the curriculum that was being fed to their children, whether it was totally inappropriate sexual material for in young ages, or a woke curriculum that was suggesting to kids that they should hate themselves simply because of who they are and what they were born as. And so these sorts of things have awakened families in ways that they had not been alert to before the pandemic. And many families are demanding other options and other alternatives, and some are finding them on their own. They all need to be supported in doing that.
And before I let you go, we have about a minute or so left. I want to talk about the Biden administration's changes to Title IX, in particular, the implications of adding gender identity to Title IX. Your thoughts?
Well, first of all, this is going to be devastating for women's sports. The notion that a biological male could be competing on women's teams wherever and whenever they choose to just does away with this notion that women should have the equal opportunity to compete. And so that is problem number one. Problem number two is all of the perhaps unintended, maybe intended consequences of individuals who are choosing, who are changing their gender identity, and then in college dorm settings and in other areas where biological males and females have had distinguishing residences and so forth. Suddenly, this may become a problem for young women who are suddenly confronted with an individual who has decided that they are now female when in fact they're biological male, and they may end up with a roommate not by their choosing, and not much opportunity to do anything about it. I think there are tremendous unintended consequences that are at the root of all of this. I think for the Biden administration, and certainly the people who are running this rule, these are intended consequences. But the average person needs to know and understand the threat that these proposed rules have for women's equal opportunity to pursue their education, and including sports and all activities together in an education setting and an education experience. This is a real issue, and now's the time for people to actually speak into that through the comment period, which is open right now for anyone to make comment.
Well, Secretary DeVos, thank you so much for coming on and speaking to us about all of this. We appreciate your insights.
Thank you so much, Tracy.